Oh, there we go. I just realized it's been a mess of last 2 minutes. We have sound. Oh dear God. All right. So we're gonna have to start again. What an embarrassing launch, guys. Absolutely embarrassing. All right. Thank you so much for being patient. Let's start again. We. How did I do this? Welcome to tonight's live stream. We're gonna have a special weekly Sunday live show, 9 p.m. Every Sunday. We're gonna come to you guys on top of all the daily shows that we have. We're gonna have a news roundup for 15 minutes, and we're gonna have a special guest with us tonight as well. And obviously, we're gonna answer questions from the members of the channel, and we're gonna introduce you to a new segment called Today in History. Okay, now we do have a live poll in the live chat. I'm going to come to live chats regularly throughout the evening as well. Apologies again for the mess. I have no idea what happened there. For the first 2 minutes, we had no sound. Thanks for being patient. So in the live in the live chat, I asked you guys, what should Lord Frost do? Because tonight's topic is about Lord David Frost resigning from the House of Lords. I asked you guys, what should he do? 35% of you said he should become Tory leader. 47% of you said he should just defect to Reform UK. And 18% of you said that he should just start a new Conservative Party. So we're going to keep you guys posted throughout the evening on the result of the live poll. Make sure to participate. Now, let's start the show by talking about Lord David Frost. So apparently he's done with the House of Lords. And recently he's been making a lot of interventions, political speeches, about the state of the country and the government. He's disappointed with the Tory party and Tory government. So it's quite fascinating because there are still some conservatives who have hopes and they believe that people like Frost could actually be their savior. Obviously, people like me, I'm independent, so I don't really care. I don't really have faith right now in the Tory party or this government. But at the same time, we know the chaos that Keir Starmer could actually create in this country. The problem we have with people like Lord Frost is people would say, well, he was part of government. He was part of Boris Johnson's cabinet, and he didn't really complain much. Some supporters of Frost would say he was complaining internally, and he was trying to fight from inside the tent. And he's also received a lot of criticism for the negotiations of Brexit. But again, his team came out to say he wasn't really in charge of the policy decisions. He was simply being sent to communicate the government's line when it comes to those negotiations. Again, if you're not happy, why would you do that job? So he is, I believe, going to be fighting for a seat in the House of Commons now. So that's the answer that he wants to do essentially at this point. Again, I can see the live chat. People are happy that you can actually hear me now. I am so sorry for what happened earlier. I forgot one button. This is exactly why you need a bigger team like BBC Studios. Thank you so much, Mickey Mouse, for super chat support, saying thanks for the work you do, apart from the first 2 minutes. Thank you. Thanks you. Okay, so what we are hearing is that Pauline Latham, who is the Conservative MP for Mid Derbyshire, is going to be standing down. And it's a pretty good seat. And so people around Lord Frost are telling me that he might be looking at that seat to actually leave the House of Lords, join the House of Commons, become officially an elected politician, and then trying to fight inside the Tory party. So he might actually have bigger plans and in terms of long term. But at the same time, we don't really know exactly how long it will take for the Tory party to wake up. Right now, I have no faith. Now, there are some people still in the comment section when I do video updates accusing me of being a Tory mouthpiece. Have you not seen me my videos? All the chaotic stories about this government. I am not going to be partisan on issues that affect the whole country. So this is the line that we have from Team Frost. Now, there are obviously the rule changes came in place in 2014 to allow live peers to resign or retire from the House of Lords and then afterwards run for office as an MP in the Commons. Although 165 peers have left the Lords since the rule change, none of them has yet stood to be an MP. Actually, thank God for that. Previously, only hereditary peers could renounce their titles, as Sir Alec Douglas Home did after becoming Prime Minister in 1963. Okay, so having known all this, I want to know your thoughts on whether you have faith in people like Frost, or do you believe that it's too late for the Tory party? We have Peter Mitchell saying the entire House of Lords should resign. I probably believe that. I agree with that. We have Kay Smith saying great news as long as it not. I mean, I don't know. We can't really tell anymore. We get disappointed all the time. What do we have? I lose faith in reform due to Richard Tice's failure to challenge the government over the virus scam. So there are still a lot of people who want people like Richard Tice and Reform UK to do more when it comes to being anti-establishment. To some people like Tice still come across as a bit of establishment, so still not good enough for them. But now we have Andrew Bridgen joining Reclaim, so that would be quite interesting to see what's going on. We actually had Kay just saying Andrew has joined Reclaim. He won't be joining Reform. Okay, so what do you guys think of Frost and the House of Lords? Yes, we have this comment saying it would be wonderful to see the end of House of Lords. Yep. And Oliver says the government is conservative. The institutions are leftist. Well, to be fair, conservative with the big C, yes. The issue we have is that even the Tory party, the leadership of the Tory party, they are, generally speaking, more liberal than previously. But the Conservative Party doesn't really have an ideology. It never had an ideology. It's just it's a platform with a set of values. But right now, people believe that they've gone so liberal that they are losing their basic values as a political party. So we have people talking about the different parties. Jack says, I like Lawrence Fox. I wish that they all got together and really shake it up. So apart from this, we also had so much happening earlier. I did a couple of news updates for you guys on various issues. We have a quick super chat support from, I believe, a Reform UK supporter, Lee. Thank you so much. Lee says doing a great job. I appreciate that. I still feel so embarrassed for earlier on. The first 2 minutes of mute. All right, let's talk about what else we were discussing earlier, because it's been absolutely chaotic. It's a weekend and it's still chaotic. It's Sunday. Give me a break, guys. So first, we discovered that the SNP police investigation is escalating, and they're now looking into an Amazon Prime account. There's an Amazon Prime account that has been spending the SNP money, allegedly. A lot of items have been bought, relatively cheap and expensive items, and they are going through them. They might be linked to the missing money. So that's beautiful, isn't it? We also had an update on, this is actually quite disgusting. This is the City Council of London. Transport for London. London Underground is facing a lot of issues with toxic dust. And the high level of that would actually cause heart issues, especially for children and, of course, for the staff, drivers and everybody else in the Underground. City Council's office came out to spin the message saying, no, everything's fine. It's clean air. You can trust the London Underground. It is not really going to cause any issues with people's health. But basic scientific reports have showed that, again, certain level of this toxic dust would actually cause heart issues massively. So Silicon is basically completely ignoring the problem as usual when it comes to science. Silicon is not really into it, is it? Okay. We're staying with the Labour Party. We also earlier on talked about Keir Starmer's plans. We leaked the potential Labour Party manifesto yesterday, and following that, the mainstream media are slowly catching up. So yes, we are still leading the media movement. But one of the aspects of this was giving voting rights to foreigners, which is not a surprise. We've been talking about this. We've been warning about this for months and months. But seeing it written down confirms these theories, and they're quite horrifying. Imagine moving to, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, let's just say, or Japan. I always use that as an example, and start working. And then you just knock on the door of government saying, can I start voting? Can I be able to vote for your main elections, national elections, and also stand as a politician? They'll just kick you out immediately. They're not going to have any time for you on this issue. But we know that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party do not trust the British population. So it will help them if they invite some foreigners in, EU nationals, for example, because they say, hey, we were the party that let you in. Welcome. Now you have to vote for us. Disgusting. Now, on the same issue, we also broke this story about Mick Lynch. He made a speech earlier this week, and he was saying that there is no such thing as an illegal migrant, and we should give full rights, including employment, from day one, the moment a migrant enters the country, regardless of how they enter the country, whether it's on a plane or a small boat, even if they don't have documentations. Mick Lynch believes that we should just give full rights to all migrants. Now, the problem with this is that ideologically, it makes sense for the political left to far left to do this, because this is exactly how you bring down the culture and the system, and you rebuild it from scratch, and you can turn it into your own utopia. But logically speaking, it goes against everything that the trade unions stand for. The trade unions claim to be on the side of their workers, but and their members. You do realize what happens if you do mass migration, Mick Lynch. Wages will go down, and your members will kick off again. But clearly, he's also out of touch like the rest of the political class. Okay, now, what else do we have? Oh, yes, Welsh nationalists. There's going to be a police investigation, another police investigation, this time in Wales, because Plaid Cymru can't really get their act together and monitor their own party and have discipline, self-discipline. All the harassments and complaints about certain people in the party have been ignored. Adam Price, the leader, had to resign. Griffith is now the new interim leader, and the new interim leader decided to actually say, I don't think I can do this on my own, so we're going to have to get the police to investigate my own party to find out who is toxic and who is not. Well, I'm going to predict most of you are toxic. Firstly, you are in a political party, so by default you are. You lie for a living. But we'll see what happens with that as well. Oh, God, yeah. You ready for this? The Scottish Green Minister from the Green Party, Lorna Slater, has been using taxpayers' money to, instead of taking the state-owned ferry to the Isle of Rum, she decided to take get a private boat and use taxpayers' money to fund it with her team just to do a governmental visit to Rum. And she thinks it's absolutely normal. So we've done all these updates. It's all on the channel. Make sure to check it out. Now, we have a new segment as well where we're going to go to the members Q&A. Members of the channel have been sending their questions in advance. I'm going to answer them now. We're also going to come back to the live chat. Don't worry, guys. Those of you who are not members, I'm going to have a chat with you guys in a second as well. But first things first, let's go to a new segment called Members Q&A. Okay, so let's start this chaos of the members. Let's see what you guys have for me tonight. We have a few questions. I'm going to go through them quickly. And then we're going to have our interview as well. We were going to do the interview before the members Q&A, but it's best to do that first because we're going to actually stay longer and to go through everything. So David says, where will it all end for our naturally conservative Britain? Well, firstly, I'm going to take it as this is small c conservative, not big C, as in Tory party. It is, well, these are challenging times. We know that because one of the problems that we have is that the Tory party until now claimed to be the home of conservatism. And for a long time, it hasn't been. And we can't even define what conservatism is anymore in this country. The problem with it is that it's not a political ideology. It is a set of values. It's a philosophy. It's about being patriotic about this country and having your British values and culture to be protected. But apparently these days, if you even talk about it, it is rude and politically incorrect. So if you can't even publicly talk about it, how can you expect a political party, any political party, to speak out on behalf of us? So there are smaller parties that would say they are socially conservative, like the Heritage Party, for example, but they don't really have any politicians elected. Reform UK, I believe they want to be a conservative-leaning party, but again, they're too polished, I guess. But it's quite challenging. I do believe that there's going to be a cycle of things will change, basically. Right now, we're going through a cycle of doom, but there will be a backlash, and I think the moment the political left gets into power, actual power, because they already control everything, then there's going to be a backlash. We'll see. Next question is from Barbara. Barbara says, Davos man, Starmer, now promises us Blairism on steroids. Is he misreading the room? Is he even in the same room? Yeah, I think they know exactly what they're doing. They know that they're being dishonest with the public, and he's trying to do a reverse David Cameron in 2010. Both technically going for the center vote, the center ground. But I don't really like those words because it's basically a bunch of people who are middle class and liberal, and they're sitting on a fence. They don't really want full on socialism, but they are scared of being conservative because that's basically racist. And he's trying to pander to them. But at the same time, it didn't really work for David Cameron in 2010. He didn't get a majority. He went too green and liberal, and it alienated so many people, especially in the shires and small towns, and it backfired. So I don't know what the establishment is doing. There's no guarantee that Starmer will get a majority in the next election. It's likely that he will get a coalition, a minority. Andrew Ellis says, I'm in favour to tax the Church of England. Why, you ask? To teach the Archbishop of Canterbury a lesson. I am sick of hearing his woke nonsense. Would you be in favour to tax the church? Sincerely, Andrew Ellis. I like the sentiment. Unfortunately, I'm not into using taxation as punishment. Taxation is theft, don't forget. But I do believe there has to be accountability. I do believe that I think there might be time for some sort of reform, reformation, a new reformation when it comes to the role of people like Justin Welby in our parliament. Don't forget, he's a member of the House of Lords. He's able to get involved with policy discussions. I think it's time to change that, because just because you're head of church, well, leading the church essentially, doesn't mean that you should be able to make policy decisions or interfere in policy decisions. So I'm not going to tax the church, but well, we're going to have a proper conversation. All right, so what else do we have? Robert says, well, with all the fuss about climate change, why on earth are scientists, I think there's something missing, and the use of chemtrails are not being talked about? This is the other thing, by the way. There are a lot of issues. There are a lot of topics that are being mentioned on the new media. So other channels, websites, blogs. Some could be truthful, some could be fake news, some could be theories. Doesn't really matter. Everything must be discussed. And the problem we have is that the mainstream media and establishment shut down certain topics. And what happens when you shut down certain topics? Regardless of if they are fully accurate or theory or semi-true or completely just an opinion, you will build it up and it will completely go crazy. You have to allow debate to happen. What if we're missing something? What if someone has a theory about some sort of scientific thing and we don't really know about because we're not allowed to discuss it? But at the same time, if somebody is going to be a genuine, as they say, tinfoil hatter or just a conspiracy theorist, it's still best to debate these things, because in case they're wrong, then we can actually debunk it. And what if they're also right? Then we actually could find out new information. And if someone's just being an idiot, then, or have some sort of evil agenda, then you can actually expose them. The best way to inform people and educate people is to actually have these debates. So whether it's on climate change or anything else, we're not allowed to even do it on radio, on TV. Really, you can't really dispute any of these areas, because they're just not going to invite you again. That's the issue. And that's what we have to continue to grow the movement that is new media. Okay, what else do we have? Mark Smith. Where's my face? It's a big comment. What was the outcome of the full and frank discussion between Boris Johnson and the then Prince Charles? Was the Rwanda policy dropped at the time because of opposition from Prince Charles? Was agreed some time ago that the bill to scrap EU laws was itself scrapped in exchange for the Windsor Agreement? It seems that our parliament is just theatre, and that deals are always agreed beforehand. So there are two different things. One is the Rwanda stuff. That wasn't dropped. The government continued to go with it, and they had their court battles, and they now won. And I believe they say that they're going to have the first flight within weeks. That's what they say. But the Rwanda policy wasn't dropped, and actually Suella Braverman increased it, and she made sure that they finalized the accommodations in Rwanda. She did a trip to Rwanda to see and do the whole PR publicity stuff. And so that's one, regardless of what Prince Charles said in Rwanda during the Commonwealth Summit, and when Boris Johnson had a fight with Charles, they still went with it. But the second one, scrapping EU laws, That's different. There are right now allegations against Rishi Sunak's government from inside the establishment saying this was part of the deal to get the Windsor Agreement with Ursula von der Leyen to essentially water down the idea of scrapping the EU laws. That's been mentioned a few times from the sources inside the establishment. And we now know that we're not really going to scrap the 4,000 EU laws, which is, again, not really helping the situation for Rishi Sunak's government. Stay on that for a second, by the way, and we're going to go back to the 4,000 EU laws. We have Lady Sarcastro saying, I recently heard, but I've not looked up, that based on the amount of food being bought and sewage being generated, that there is approximately 100 million people living in England alone, rather than 73 million, we are told, in England and Wales. If true, surely this is something that needs to be spoken about. So I'm not really sure how we can actually prove that, because we have to rely on the data from the actual state and government. But maybe we're just eating more. I don't know. I do believe that there's a lot extra waste compared to the past because of the rise of the supermarkets and fast food. A lot of the food and sewage and just waste that's being made, they're not actually being consumed. So this is the product of the Americanization of the commercial market. So it's a bit of a problem. So it could be because of that, and not really sure. Maybe we are more people living with us. So on that note, quickly we're going to start the new segment, and we're going to have a special interview. And our guest tonight is Steven Barrett, the barrister who went on TV to tell the truth about the EU laws being removed or not being removed right now, because the government and their excuse is that civil servants say it's too difficult and it's going to take time, years and decades, so we can't really do it. So they convinced the ministers and the prime minister to just make a U-turn and not really do anything about it. But Steven Barrett went on TV a few times and told the truth that you can actually do it. A good law firm could just sort it out. Won't take that long. So let's go to the interview we did. We have with Steven Barrett. I'll just also realize before we do it, I need to really do something about the blinds behind me. I've had a chat with the landlord. They're broken, basically. You're going to see in a second. Let's go to the interview. Okay, now we're joined by Steven Barrett, the barrister, the writer for The Spectator, and the man who got famous recently by going on TV and exposing the truth about the EU laws removal. Obviously, the government have been claiming that it's almost impossible to do that. But Steven went on TV and said, well, if you have a good law firm, you can actually go through them all and civil service. So welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I've just got back from quite a long journey back from Bournemouth, and I'm a single dad with a small child, so I'm doing great.
Brilliant. So yeah, obviously you got famous by going on TV and telling the truth about the legal aspects of this battle. As what we've heard recently is, well, to some people it seems like a U-turn on or Brexit betrayal on the promise to either remove or amend these 4,000-ish laws that we have that is still in our statute book from the European Union. Now they're saying that we're just going to assume that they're all going to stay, but we're going to go through them the other way around. So we might remove like 600, but not all of them. So what are your thoughts on this? What's going on?
Yes, well, so I only do the law, and I've been doing that for 3 years in public, and I find it increasingly comforting because it means I get to not care. So I don't care about any of this. All I care about is getting the law right. Now, a very famous and well-respected legal publisher estimated calculated in 2017, so that's 6 years ago, that actually the EU had made or had its hand in 52,741 laws. Now that number only got bigger until we eventually Brexited. And what then happened during the Brexit process was there was a clear policy angle by someone to make divergence as hard as possible. So the importance of EU courts was elevated well above our own. and doesn't fit well with our normal structure. And the normal supremacy and system of laws were not restored. They are going to be restored, or say they're going to be restored by this bill. But the other thing that the bill said was, look, we're going to get rid of the really low-hanging fruit. Not the 52,000 or 53,000, who goodness knows how many there are now. Not the major stuff that would be major policy decisions, but we're just going to clear out a lot of the dross. And when I say dross, there is an international standard in your ports to have a fitting so that ships can receive diesel oil that ships need. Now, that is set by an international body. If you want to, you can be the one country in the world that doesn't do that. I mean, we all know what would happen to how often ships came to visit you if you did do that. Yep. But, you know, in theory, the EU made that law in our country. And in theory, by getting rid of it, you know, we're at some terrible risk. But it seems obvious to me that we would simply follow the international standard. And that happens quite a lot on sort of product specifications that have happened. The 4,000 as they became are not in any way tricky. And the idea of going through them and reviewing them and putting them into 3 piles marked completely useless, probably useless, oh, Minister, you might want to have a think about this.
Right.
Was what I said is not a tricky task. And it's not a tricky task.
So these are not the ones that would affect international trade. These are not the big international obligation in terms of if you remove them, then they're not going to let you in Germany, for example.
No, they're not big in any way. They're not. Look, I mean, given your,
are they like the bendy bananas, those sort of stuff?
Well, they're even more boring, even more pointless. The ones that are relevant in that pile, I suggest are so glaringly, obviously relevant that even the dimmest minister wouldn't miss them if the sift actually went through. But what has happened that is it calls into question, really, the civil service, is that they've simply taken the line that we can't do this. Right. We can't. It's impossible to review 4,000 pieces of secondary legislation, hardly any of which is in any way interesting, and we can't do it in a year. And I'm speaking out about that because I wouldn't. I mean, if my clients come to me, and I have to tell them how long a piece of work, they say we want this piece of work. And then I have to say, well, it will take this many hours and this many days. Yeah, and if I suddenly said, oh, it's going to take 100 years and I'll need 1,000 extra staff, they would sort of go, thank you very much, Mr. Barrett. We're just going to move down the road to your opponent. We're just going to instruct, you know, your competitor because
yeah. So it seems like
what on earth are you on about? But the ministers don't have a competitor. The ministers only have the civil service, and the civil service has been holding this line. Now, that won't be everybody in the civil service because there are highly capable lawyers in the civil service. I've met them, I've worked with them, and they won't be holding this line because it's not a line that you can plausibly hold. But somebody is holding this line. Somebody is telling ministers this is technically impossible and frankly embarrassing the competence of the rest of the civil service. He's basically saying, whoever this person is, this imaginary person, and by the way, I always call imaginary people Barry, but so whoever this Barry the civil servant is, he's basically going, Minister, oh, and we can't possibly do it. We're so rubbish. We're so, that's really mean to the rest of the civil service.
Not to exaggerate the situation, but it's one of those situations where I kind of encourage or would try to have more whistleblowing as a concept because I feel like there will be, you know, there are a few good civil servants and lawyers in there. They're just going home after work and just being frustrated. They don't have the power. They don't feel the power to actually come out to speak out or tell someone. So that's one issue. But I want to lastly kind of focus on the other parts of it, which is Alistair Campbell. Alistair Campbell was interviewed recently on the Newsnight, I believe, and he claimed that from day one, all these EU laws, it was by choice. We had the choice as a country and Parliament whether to implement or not. What's your view on that? Because clearly that's not true, right?
Yes, that's not true. So Alistair Campbell got very angry and aggressive. I think he's apologised for his behaviour, although
not to the guest though, but to.
Well, I often find his apologies tricky to follow, but I believe he's apologised. The assertion is simply false. It is wrong. The EU makes direct laws in nation states, in member states, and it makes sort of partially indirect laws by way of directive. But it will tell you when it wants you to implement the directive by, and it will. And if you change the directive in a way they don't like, they will tell you. and the commission will enforce it. So the idea that it's somehow voluntary is absurd. I mean, that is simply not a statement that is in any way true. And I've got many friends who are I'll confess to you, I don't have many friends. I've got a couple who are EU lawyers inside the UK. I'm not completely hated, but I've got an awful lot on the continent, because of course to them, they again don't really care about our politics. So they only care about them. To them, it would be a risible statement to say that we were ever able to say no to an EU law. No, your choice is to implement the law or to leave. That is the legal choice. The supremacy of EU law has been established for a very long time. In fact, I've bored an awful lot of people with other member states of the EU who have denied supremacy. And I've told them off in the press. I've said they should be doing this because EU law is supreme. And you get these sort of Twitter warriors who are like, oh, we could definitely just ignore EU law. It's like, no, you can't. It makes sense. It's this can't question, which is really, really important, because that goes to something that I fundamentally represent. Law will always be about can and can't, and politics will always be about should. And it's really, really important that can't stays small. It has to be in a narrow area. It has to be controlled. It's not for lawyers to start going, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. Us picking arbitrarily what you can do. Maya, you can't wear a green t-shirt. You have to wear a blue one. Why? Well, because I wrote it in regulation somewhere. You know, this is not what's happening. And the myth of EU membership, or the thing that people didn't understand during the Brexit debate, or the thing that was actively denied to the people during the Brexit debate, because I do remember Nick Clegg standing up and saying, oh, they hardly make any laws.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
and that again is a statement which I think is, as a matter of law, in no way plausible.
When Nick Clegg was not the best to even predict the future, he claimed that there's no such thing as an idea for an EU army or the EU defense union. Well, that was wrong.
Yeah, it is. And again, I go back to my friends inside the EU who would just be horrified at these statements. Like, why are you denying what we'd quite like you to do? To them, it is completely alien. But this has been the nature of the British debate, and I've just sailed into it by being honest about the law. And it is not for us, and that the reason is it is simply not for lawyers to tell the people what to believe and what to choose and what to want. It simply isn't.
So what you're saying is that even the lawyers who might have been obviously Remainers at the time, so became political during the campaign, not only that they alienated a chunk of the British population because they thought they're against them, they also alienated the European Union, because the EU was saying, you're undermining what we actually want to do. We want to do more. You're claiming that we're not doing anything, Brussels. So it's brilliant.
Well, it's completely it's the oddity of where our politics got to. It sort of became post-truth politics, and it's simply, I will only intervene when statements that are made. Can you see my dog active in the background? She's desperate to become a star. But I will only intervene when a statement is made that is so obviously false that I think, an intervention needs to come in, because you need to know what the law is. I mean, we had this in the House of Lords again recently. I think it was last week. It raised its ugly head. Members of the House of Lords were saying we can't break international law. Now that's not true. We don't actually break international law. We ignore it. There's a whole big body of international law, so going back hundreds and thousands of years. We pick from that pool bits of international law we think are useful, and we put them in our law. And when they're in our law, we're good and we follow the rule of law and we don't break them. Right. Which, by the way, that's actually what Alistair Campbell was arguing we should do, because we take an EU law, we put it into our law, and we should follow the rule of law, so we have to follow EU directives. So the idea they're optional is a bit like, no, you're arguing we should break the rule of law. But that's what we do. We take them in, we pull them in, and they're inside our rules. And then if we unincorporate them, if Parliament breaks the treaty, if Parliament removes the act, the statutes, then off they float back into that land and away from us, where we obey the rule of law.
It's absolutely chaotic. To be fair, with all these conversations, I might actually give you your own show on the channel, talk about the legal stuff. That would be fun. But I thank you so much, Steven Barrett, for coming on the show. What is your Twitter handle, so people know if they want to? It
is S Barrett Bar. I thought that was neutral, non-political, and perfectly respectable.
If you want to follow the legal nerdy stuff, follow Steven. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And guys, let's get back on. Okay, so that was fun, wasn't it? Steven Barrett's very informative and educational. What are your thoughts, guys, in the live chat? We had a few comments about. Um, there's people still debating about the different political parties, the smaller parties making an alliance and creating their own conservative party. We have Logan saying Howard Cox for mayor. Um, Glad to see everyone's on topic, by the way. But no, yeah, it's important to obviously bring back the issue of talking about the actual constitution, because it does matter. We have Andrew saying people are sovereign, no consultation, no treaty or laws. Things are changing. The system is changing, and it's already changed. And this is the whole issue. And Steven Barrett was absolutely spot on to talk about the problems of the day when it comes to civil servants or lawyers in civil service who are claiming that, well, we can't really get this done. We can't really manage to remove every single EU law, or even majority of them or some of them. And but now he's telling the truth. Stephen Barrett was brave enough to go on TV and talk about this, even though he knew that some of his legal friends will get upset that he actually exposed the truth about it. But it is what it is. Now, we also have a new segment on this channel. As for those of you, if you joined late, there's the new show Sunday live streams at 9 p.m. where we come to you guys between 9 and 10 p.m. UK time. We do the news roundup. We also have a special guest every week. We answer questions from members, still also deal with the live chat as well for those who are not members, and a new segment called Today in History. Okay, this is just a fun segment. I thought it would be good to go through what's been happening on this day throughout the last few centuries. We're going to start with the 18th century. It's just a few important stuff that happened in the world or in this country. Okay, so first things first, in 1767, Britain and the British Empire government disbanded the Americans' import duty on tax. Well, it was a little bit too late by then, because the American revolutionaries already made up their mind what they wanted. So that kind of escalated the situation. And of course, a few years later, we had the Americans doing their own stuff and obviously disobeying the orders of the empire. Now, we also had in 18th century, 1796. Well, this was controversial. Dr. Edward Jenner administered his cowpox-based vaccine for smallpox in England for the first time. And then obviously that paved the way for all the other experiments and everything else that's happened since that year when it comes to the medical stuff and all the scientific discoveries. So then if we stay, actually next century, 19th century, we had this, going back to actually England. In 1894, Blackpool Tower was first opened to the public, who paid a 6p entrance fee. Get this, 6p to get in, another 6p for a ride in the lifts to the top, and a further 6p for the circus. Now, we complain about inflation these days, but not really sure. And it was actually as easy. I don't know who came up with this idea to keep charging people even when they're already inside Blackwall Tower. So that's what happened in 1894. Then we go to the next century. This was actually a very important day. On this day, in the year 1948, Israel declared independence from the British administration. Okay, that's actually quite interesting, because that was the time when more chaos actually started to happen in the Middle East. Although some would claim that it all happened because of this and this moment, but actually in reality, chaos was already happening decades before. Even towards the end of the 19th century, we had issues with the Arab tribes and the Jewish people in Israel. Obviously, it wasn't official Israel at that time. And chaos continued, and it's still there. There is still absolutely no solution for the problems in the Middle East. Now, 20th century again, this is actually interesting, because on this day in 1965, the field at Runnymede, the site of the signing of the Magna Carta, was dedicated by Elizabeth II, the Queen, as a memorial to the late John F. Kennedy. the US president. It is interesting because obviously this was supposed to be a big memorial. It was supposed to be a big move to show the special relationship. And it was one of those times, back then, you actually had the monarch being slightly more visible and more active with at least state level stuff. Right now, towards the end of Elizabeth II, and especially now, the monarch doesn't do anything really. And actually, right now with Charles, a lot of people are happy about that, thinking it's probably best if we don't see the monarch that much, unless it's some sort of celebration. But back then, you actually had, and even before Elizabeth, we had the monarch making important speeches about the state of the country. He wasn't really the prime minister, but things have changed. Now we're going to the next century, 21st century. On this day in 2013, the London offices of BP and Shell were raided by the European regulators investigating allegations that they had colluded to rig the oil prices for more than a decade. Oh, how very naughty of BP and Shell. This is not really a big shock to those who know the history of these sort of companies, but even the European regulators thought, okay, I think it's a bit too much corporatism right now. You have too much power. Well, we're going to have to raid your offices and add slightly more regulations that wouldn't really do anything. This has always been the issue, whether it's the oil companies or the banking sector. We always had this problem where the state, or obviously on the European level, EU would get involved, would say, we're going to have to do more to monitor you, but nothing actually changes. They do more paperwork, more bureaucracy, but if they want to do wrongdoings, they're still going to do it. Now, the final story on this day is more personal. It's actually me. Yes. On this day, 9 years ago, Mahyar Tousi without a beard was campaigning for Scotland to remain in the United Kingdom. Oh my God, the absolute state of me in that photo. Yeah, I'm not really sure I like my face without a beard. Blair, let me know in the comment section. So yeah, this was in central London, Trafalgar Square, when we were campaigning against the SNP and the Yes campaign to have Scotland leave the Union. And so that's all the stories that we have for you guys on this week's segment on Today in History. I'm going to try and find at least one story that is more relevant or about me. But let's make it about me. It's my show, isn't it? All right, so let's go to the live chat for a few minutes and see what you guys are talking about. This is the perfect time actually to do a review of the live poll to see the results. And I'm also, what I'm going to do in the live chat, I'm going to start a Q&A. Ask me anything. There we go. We just started the Q&A as well in the live chat. So you can actually go on that new box and ask me anything. The live poll, the results, the latest result. We asked you guys, the topic of tonight was about Lord David Frost resigning from the House of Lords. And, actually, before we do that, we have a comment from Christine saying, wow, you look young there. I know, back in the day, when I was in my late 20s. Yeah, I think it was 20s. Yeah, just generally 20s. Okay. We asked you guys, well, what should Lord Frost do if he's quitting the House of Lords? And you guys said, 35% of you said that he should try and become Tory leader and lead the Conservative Party and make it better. 46% of you, that's leading, saying he should just defect to Reform UK. And 19% of you, that's the minority, say that he should start a new Conservative Party, a real Conservative Party. So that's the latest result. What's going on? Jonathan says a hairy situation. Are you guys still talking about my hair and my beard? It's so naughty. All right. What do we have here? Reform. Okay, we have a comment about the parties. Reform, Reclaim, and UKIP should join forces and start a new party called UK Patriots with Farage as leader. Actually, UK Patriots is a great name for a news channel. I should have thought about it before I started this channel, right? Let's see. Make sure to use the Ask Me Anything, the Q&A, to if you have any questions about any political issue or personal issue. Just don't ask about my hair, and we're gonna be friends forever. Okay, we have someone saying Lord Frost should defrost. Veridral, absolutely brilliant. And we also have Oh yeah, responding to what Leeway said, Andrew says, "I wish they would create a new party, an alliance of the smaller parties, because they'll end up control of Parliament and the Tories would be gone." Christine says, "I'm not really sure about Reform UK." And but yeah, it is difficult. You know why? Because you might think that some of these parties mentioned, in that list, Reform, Reclaim, Heritage, UKIP, and everything, you might think that they are overall similar, but they have more differences than they have more in common, which is quite rare. And put aside the personal egos of each party and party leader, you also have massive differences of values. And this is one of the things that's good to kind of think about sometimes. We might think on the surface, well, they're all anti-establishment, they're all not communist, and they're all patriotic. Yeah, but it goes beyond that. For example, Heritage Party has very different ideas. SDP has very different ideas to UKIP. And Reclaim is completely different. And I'm not really sure what the plan is with Reclaim, although they now have their first member of parliament, Andrew Bridgen. But it's difficult to actually have these parties working together as much as a lot of people would want it. Stephen who has a picture of a Disraeli in his profile picture, saying, "Wouldn't it be easier to radicalize the existing Tory party infrastructure rather than trying to start from scratch?" That is usually the idea. And there are those who are just sick and tired of saying, well, we're not really patient anymore, let's just leave the party. As long as the system is what it is, everything about the system. So the electoral system, the way the House of Commons seats and the party system and everything else, it sounds bad, but the Conservative Party will remain the main platform. The platform, not in terms of the people leading it, not in terms of the members of it, the platform, in terms of the brand, for basic centre-right policies. So technically, it means if a group of people, sound people, take over the party, they can actually change it and make it conservative and win. But it sounds easy to say, it's not easy to do. But if the system changes, massive reforms, then yeah, we could actually just ignore the Tory party even as a platform to infiltrate or to join or change. And then you can actually potentially have new parties, a new Conservative Party or new smaller parties getting together. Well, if they could actually put their ego aside. So we have people, for example, like Lizzie says, "I don't trust Richard Tice." There are still people on the centre right who just can't agree that these parties are generally similar. We have a comment in favour of David Curtin, saying David Curtin is the most honest Heritage Party, but the whole system has to go. So this happens. And we don't really know exactly what the plan is for the Tory party. We don't really know. We have obviously this new Conservative Democratic organisation that is going to be reforming the Tory party, but I'm not really sure if they're going to be able to do it. When you have Priti Patel, the former Home Secretary, as your leading warrior, she's too establishment to do that. Margaret says, "Why are you not standing for Mayor of London? You would be brilliant." Yeah, it'll be Mayor Maya for mayor. No, my job is to be outside of the political circus, to make sure that I'm the warrior from the outside. There are those who have the talent and they should, if they want to, sacrifice their lives and actually join a political party and do political stuff. But for now, for the foreseeable future, I'm not a party political person, and I'm gonna stay above that for now. Maybe in the future, within the next few decades, things might change when I get bored of being media, because we are the media. TV is dead. Harry says, "Conservative Democratic Party missed the cue." And Jax says, "As long as there is postal voting, nothing will change. In London, 21 people living in one bed flat in Tower Hamlets, all voting for Sadiq Khan. London has fallen." That's actually a very good point, because while they just introduced the voter ID thing, which, by the way, the result of it came out, they said about only 1% of voters were turned away from voting. And a big chunk of the 1% went home and got their passports or driver's license and went back to vote. So it didn't really did the voting, the suppression thing that they were talking about. It didn't really change the results. But my point is, despite the fact that they introduced that, there are still problems with the electoral system, including the postal votes. And that is going to be a huge problem, considering that Starmer also has plans to give a voting right to foreigners and children, because children are very wise these days, according to the left. We are going to see absolute chaos. Not only Reform UK, but we're not even going to be able to get the Tory party getting elected anymore, because the franchise of the voting system will be increased to those who are generally speaking on the political left, the EU nationals and children. What's going on? Anne says, Reclaim is great, but Lawrence Fox is pro-EU. Although Lawrence Fox did vote to remain in the European Union, although he now says he regrets that, but we don't know. He's what do they call them? The reborn Brexiteers? Re-Brexiteers or something like that. The real Pollyanna says, Mahyar, do you think Reclaim and Reform should join up? It's not going to happen, but they, as I said, they are different. They have different values. For example, the whole saga with Andrew Bridgen, Richard Tyson, Reform UK completely rejected the idea of being associated with Andrew Bridgen. So Reform UK are trying to become more broad and more politically correct and more mainstream. And they thought that by having Andrew Bridgen, for example, in Reform UK, it will alienate a lot of voters. So they had that fear. So don't think it's going to happen, this alliance. Okay, so I believe we've got everything. We got Laurie, one of our regulars, saying, sorry, I've been having internet problems, Mahyar. Missed most of your live. Sorry. Thanks for doing this. Who really can we trust these days? Politics are a mess. It's okay, Laurie. The first 2 minutes of the live stream was on mute, so nobody could actually hear me. I'm gonna have to, after this live stream is over, I'm gonna have to go on YouTube and trim the first 2 minutes. That was absolutely embarrassing. Hilarious. Okay, a couple of more comments and then we'll end this for you guys so you could actually have a nice evening. Peter says, Mahyar, I'm a conservative man, but I was asked a question in late 2020 that changed my train of thought about our need to be governed by anyone. People change, of course. There is a problem because we don't, as I said earlier at the beginning of the live stream, it really depends how you define conservatism in this country, or the word conservative, small c, big C. And we don't really know exactly if conservatism is on the side of people or purely establishment or just surrendering to the new liberal mob. So that's the biggest problem. Anyway, I believe I've been giving you guys a massive headache by ranting too much tonight. So thank you so much for all the support, and apologies again for the technical difficulties earlier on with my sound. Hopefully we'll learn and continue next week. We're going to come back every Sunday, 9 p.m. UK time, to give you guys the news updates. Each week we're going to have a special guest to interview as well, and answer questions from the members of the channel, and of course then go to the rest of you guys subscribers, lovely subscribers who've been supporting the channel and the new media movement. For those of you who just joined, missed the live stream, after this finishes, this will turn into a recorded video. Make sure to watch it. I'm going to trim the first 2 minutes. Embarrassing. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.